I was wondering what your reaction was when you first read the script.
I loved it. I mean, my first reaction was that it was very clever, and that it surprised me, and that I thought it would be in great hands in terms of being done by Jen, and then instantly moved on to, and of course there's not a hope in hell of me getting in it, because they would never think of casting me. So that it was to sort of, then my manager, Chris Proffer, said, well, you're seeing David to do your looping, so why don't you ask him? And I'm like, no, that's your job. I'd be embarrassed. And, what if he just wants to say no, and that'll make him embarrassed? And he said, oh, stop being such a wuss. And so I did. I asked David at the looping if they would consider me, and he said, for what role? And I said, the 9-year-old. You think I'm too old? And then he said, and then I said, the FBI agent, and he said, well, she never does what I tell her, but let her know. And then I got to meet with Jen and begged her for the role, and I think at some point she said something along the lines of, can you afford to take a risk on something like this? And I said, I don't feel I can afford not to.
Right. Well, tell me more about that, because obviously the story, the screenplay is extraordinary, but what about the character itself seemed like a particular challenge to you?
I think for me that the way that I speak about it is I play an FBI agent, and for me it was, for one step as an actor, for me I found that it's been really tricky for me to get modern American roles. And something that cuts up against or bucks up against what I'm usually, the type of work I'm usually offered, which tends to be classical period, weepy people who kill themselves. And that particularly what drew me was the sort of the temperature of the piece and the tone and style of the piece, that those are definitely movies that I don't get to do.
Right.
And so that was really what drew me to it. And that's kind of how I talk about it. When you
play this, was there a concept or an image or something that you used as a beacon to drive you through to create that character?
No, not really. I think I got it from the script, and I think what I liked about it, and what I often find, what I liked about it was that each of these characters have flaws. Uh-huh. Each of these characters are a product of their past. It's very much an ensemble piece, and I think has a really terrific ensemble cast, and all credit for Jen for getting the performances she did out of all of us, and that for me is what draws the audience in. It's like the humor of it, which is dark humor, and where I find myself laughing at stuff while I'm kind of like, well, hang on a minute, because that's actually not that nice for that character, or that maybe that character is going to get killed, and I really shouldn't be laughing at this.
Sure.
There was something tonally in it that reminded me of Reservoir Dogs, and I'm not making any comment on the success of the movie or anything like that, but there was something that tonally about the humor reminded me of Reservoir Dogs, but then at the heart of it, it also has this innocent child that makes it, as a piece, feel different all the way through. And it took me a while to work out what's the surveillance part of it. Like, I kind of just accepted the title and went to work, and then every now and again the question comes up, why surveillance as a title? And it took me a while to kind of process what I feel about that, and I guess I see it as something that surveillance is something that the authorities do.
Right.
And it's people watching us in order to piece together the truth with the uber objective of keeping us safe. but how judgment plays a role in that. But what they're only ever looking at is fragments of something and fragments of the truth.
Right.
Whereas this child at the center of it, whose innocence and connectedness to other people is what makes her be the observer of the ultimate truth.
Yeah. And for you as an actor, is there value in working with children? Because you look at children and they're so open and honest, and they have none of the blockades that adults tend to have.
No, they don't. I could say, hand on heart, all of the children I have worked with are unbelievably professional. And also how, I think this is probably the second time. Mm-hmm. Second time I've worked with a kid in a somewhat adult, dark film that I think potentially, raises a question for people of, is it appropriate for a child to be in a film like that? What's going to happen to the child? Is that going to be psychologically disturbing for the child? And I can honestly say, as somebody who really would not want to participate in something that was disturbing for a child, children have an amazing sense of play. Mm-hmm. And what kids do in movies, for the most part, is be way more natural and able to dive into the play, the role playing, than we are. And that's Abigail Breslin. It's, all of these kids that I've worked with have just got an incredible facility for well, they don't have the boundaries. They don't have the, they're not battling inhibitions that maybe maybe I feel I might have as an adult. So,
right.
But also when you have them in circumstances of blood and accidents or violence, they are it's like Halloween night for them. Mm-hmm. It has the same kind of approach of, this is ketchup. It looks like my head is bleeding. And that's how they put it together. And, so long, it's much more about how is that child treated on set, their rights as a child actor observed, do they get to go do their schooling, are they not pushed in terms of their hours, I can honestly say all of the parents around the kids that I've worked with have been great. And so I think there's much more safety in that than maybe is perceived from the outside when you suddenly see a film cut together.
Right.
And it, in effect, delivers something far darker.
When you saw the finished product, obviously having been with it throughout the birthing process, did anything about it surprise you?
I was just really happy with the result that she came up with. I mean, having been in it and having been part of the process, there were surprising things that happened, I guess, in the making of the film. There were definitely surprises there for me, but just pleasantly surprised that I felt she captured it and brought it all together. And I guess also, yes, what I did get to see was a lot of work that I hadn't been part of. And just thought there was sort of terrific performances from, a lot of people who I hadn't gotten to work with.
Yeah, you've been obviously very successful in bigger budgeted movies like Benjamin Button, which was my favorite movie last year, by the way.
Aww, thank you.
And at the independent films like this one, I'm wondering if it affects your acting, your freedom as an actor, being on a set like Surveillance.
I think because Surveillance for me felt like it was just very finally feeling lucky to have been cast in something that was so different to the usual stuff that I get to do. That was liberating, but I say that in the context of I've loved doing the other stuff that I've done. Mm-hmm. But I for me, the two things that I would say are liberating. One is I feel freer as an actor as I feel I have gained more experience in it. And I think that as a young actor, I would have in my head a sense of what the director wanted, or maybe my ideas that I was bringing to the table. And if in a filming circumstances they would say, okay, so let's try this, or maybe it should be that. Instead, I would have a lot of fear around, I don't know that I can do that. And now I kind of feel as an actor that having played a range of different stuff, it's kind of like, okay, all right, I hear you, let's try it. And I think that makes you more flexible as an actor. I definitely feel that as I've gotten older, I've gotten more flexible. And I also find the age thing liberating. It's an odd thing for a woman to say in film, but I really have found that the roles that I have gotten to play more recently have been much more liberating in allowing me to go out on a limb, do something that I haven't done before, that breaks away from the need to just be pretty.
Yeah. Well, this question, my last question, and then I'll let you off the hook. I thank you so much for your time, but this is a pretty loaded question. It goes along with what you've just been saying, because we had Miss Lynch on the show last week, and obviously she took a long hiatus after her debut film, and she felt like she had come to this one a deeper, kind of more mature artist. And I'm wondering, looking back, your reasons for getting into acting, how have those morphed and deepened for you over the years?
Well, I know when I set out on the path, I can remember saying to somebody that I love doing this, but I really want to still be doing it when I'm 35 and on. And so, you know, my kind of period of stepping away to get myself out of a rut, I don't want to characterize it as some people do, as turning my back on something, but more kind of feeling that I'd gotten myself through my own choices into a rut, that I had to step out in order to find another way to step back in if they would have me. And doing that right at the point as you're moving towards mid-30s or whatever was kind of icky timing. And that's never an easy thing to do. People want the assurance of, we've seen you do this before, we'd like you to do it in a different way in this project.
Yeah.
And what actually I sort of felt like I had to kind of start again and build it up again slowly with more range. And